Karibuni sana. It is Thursday. Nimefungua clinic. Relationship clinic is open, my friend. Bench nimeweka hapo nje na nime-extend bench. Niliona last week mlikuwa wengi sana, so we have extended the bench so we can accommodate more people. Mkaya msisukumane. The clinic is on. I've got two wonderful ladies in studio with us today via Zoom. And we are hanging out today with marriage counselor Pauline Gikanga. Pauline, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you, Pastor James.
Karibu sana. Nimeona uko na kashai.
Niko na kamaji, hot water.
It's good to have you on board. Karibu sana. We also have transformational coach Ruth Mweni. Ruth, how are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Karibuni sana. It's good to have you both. This month we have been talking about the seasons of marriage, and we've gone through the various seasons. Today we want to focus on the winter season. You know, I don't think in Kenya we've seen winter. Winter yetu inakuwaga tu ni joke. But for the people out there in those Western countries, when it's winter, they know. So when we talk about a winter season in marriage, what exactly does a winter season look like in a marriage relationship? Pauline?
So just like winter is cold, and yeah, like our Kenyan winter possibly is July, or maybe it has started early.
Yeah.
So it's not, well, some people don't mind it, but the majority, of course, it's very unbearable. So in a setup, in a marriage setup, the winter season is where there's a lot of harshness, a lot of bitterness, you know, towards one another, and a lot of blame game. You know, most of the time we blame one another as spouses, but then in the winter is much more than that. So there's a lot of hurt, anger, disappointments, you know, which leads to a lot of loneliness. So you find people are together, but they're not actually together. So they live together, but just they're like roommates, really. So that's the kind of season it is in a marriage setup, the winter season.
Okay. I'm wondering, Ruth, what leads to this season? Because there must have been some things that happened to get a couple to get into this season. What are some things that get people into a winter season?
Thank you, James, once again. And I believe, just like Pauline has mentioned, the winter season is usually very, very cold. And what leads to this? I'm looking at it like approaching within the 5 pillars of marriage.
Okay.
And we are talking of the finances. They could be shaken, they could be affected. You know, you're not sure who is supposed to provide. And also we look at the third parties, when we have the in-laws, we have the friends, we also have the children. And bottom line, when communication is hindered, because the communication is the enabler or the pillar of all these other pillars. When you talk of even sex is marriage, when you talk of not being able to feel each other, not being able to kind. So the conflicts revolving around not able to bring the solutions within the marriage, to understand how to be able to resolve all these things, because it could be a petty thing, a small thing like someone has not done supper in good time. And the bottom line of things are so many. It's not just the supper aspect, it is not just the greeting, lack of showing kindness to one another, and empathizing, irrespective of the seasons changing. Because seasons will always change, but if they change, how do we respond to them? So the winter comes in when we react over things, but we don't respond to issues.
Well, I like that, not responding to issues. You know, sometimes we push a lot of things under the carpet because maybe we don't like conflict, or maybe sometimes when we try and resolve things, one spouse is more vocal than the other, and so you don't want to resolve this thing. So Pauline, I don't know what you would tell us about conflict resolution, because I find that that's an area a lot of couples struggle, and we think, well, it will go away, but things keep piling up, and like we've had, they get you into this other season that is not very good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what happens, for me, the conflict is not the issue. The issue is reacting to it in a positive way. Because, I mean, imagine one of the things I always tell, even people getting married, have you had a conflict? I would be very skeptical if people have not had a conflict. True. So it is healthy to have a conflict. Now, not solving the conflict or not being able to work on it is the issue. So most of the time, of course, it's all about the other person. So knowing what is my part in this? I mean, what is it that maybe I've done? What is it that I have not done? How is my part like? So I always say, having resentment or having a lot of, I actually say pride is what makes us not solve conflict, because I don't want to go down. My spouse does not also want to go down. So I say no until he talks, or he says until she talks. And so it keeps piling up. I'm not gonna, maybe you feel all the time it's you who calls for this meeting to make up. And so you give up. So already in your mind, you're like, it's like you have the past in you. He doesn't, she doesn't. So it's always a past tense. So until we are able to know to solve a conflict as they come, don't every conflict should be a new conflict, even if it's the same. But when all the time is, even last time you did, now it becomes ambiguous. It becomes a big issue, because then you'll never solve it, because for you it becomes the norm. You have already registered in your mind that's the way they are.
Okay. In the previous hour, we were just talking about forgiveness. This whole week on the devotional hour, we are talking about forgiveness. And there's a question that has kept coming, and maybe I can throw it to you, Ruth, because it's still on the whole aspect of conflict resolution and communication. And several people are asking, how do you forgive a spouse who is a repeat offender? It's the same issue over and over again. I've forgiven you like 3 times. Every time you try to show how emotional you are and how apologetic you are, but 2 months down the line, you still do the same thing. And I'm thinking, with a situation like that, it becomes very hard not to go back to what was done before, because it's exactly the same thing. So how do you resolve such an issue?
Wow, thank you once again, James. And I think forgiveness is key, because we tend mostly look at the faults, and we become experts of fault finding in one another. And we are also not forgetting what is the basic cause of this fault, so that I could be able to forgive. I love the word of God, because the Bible clearly, when Jesus was teaching the disciples about prayer, and he mentioned that when we are praying, we pray that forgive us as we forgive others. And many times we become so selfish that I want to be forgiven, but am I so keen to forgive my partner? Am I so keen also to understand then what really caused? Because they are the foundations that lead to that. And then we start dealing on what is wrong and not who is wrong. Because if I start looking at you, James, as the person who has offended me, and not so keen on what really is the issue, then we ought to uproot and help each other. Because in marriage, when we come to partners, we've come to help each other. We are each other's support system.
Yes.
So I really want to understand what really has caused this repeat offending. Then am I so keen to be able to pick out the offense other than concentrating on the offender? Because as a partner, I should be able to look at my partner as my friend, as my confidant. So it means then they need some help, some support sort of, to be able to overcome this kind of a challenge, because none of us is perfect. We only say, the Bible says that the only one who is good is God.
Yes.
So no one is perfect or the angel here. So we need to help each other understand the root cause and work out on the root cause. If it calls for even seeking for help, then we should be able to seek for that help and understand.
Wow. Well, Linda, somebody was asking, how do I, every time we have we try and resolve a conflict with my husband, I always end up being the one who is wrong. Hata kama makosa ilikuwa yake, he has a way of just twisting this conversation until it gets to a place like, now I'm the one in the wrong, I'm the one who needs to apologize, and that means we don't communicate as much as we used to. Because every time we try and communicate, I'm just thinking, this one will end up with me being in the wrong. I will have to be the one to apologize, and it's just not favorable for me. How do you deal with a situation like that?
Oh yeah. So Pastor James, you can see a bit of what I was saying, the blame aspect there. It is my spouse always, and then the word always. You see, it's like they have already believed that always it's that way. So even when something new happens, you don't actually see it new. And that's why I'm saying, if we can know that the problem is the problem, the person is not the problem, it's the problem. So we are able to externalize and say, so this is the issue. So all right, if I feel that my spouse or my husband for this issue, for this case, always turns out the issue to be me and I'm always the guilty one, have you brought it out? You know, have you been able to say, this is what I feel? You know, I always feel that when we bring up an issue, I always feel that I'm the one who takes the blame all the time and not you. And then how you bring it up matters a lot. And that is why we always encourage couples, even in understanding the love languages of each other.
Yeah.
Because again, how do you bring it up? Are you bringing it up through, possibly if a spouse maybe likes quality time, are you having some quality time together, even as you bring up this issue? Because it becomes better for the person to hear you when you're here, we're feeling them as well. So what am I saying? You've already registered in your mind, I'm always the one. But have you brought up also that issue that this is what I feel? Because again, maybe that's how they started off, always saying, okay, I want to be the good one, I don't want to speak out. You know, I saw someone yesterday another pastor write that if your spouse is always a yes person, then there's a problem. So again, am I always saying, okay, I'm sorry, but I never really share my feelings. So if that's what I feel, I should be able to tell my spouse, this is what I feel every time we have an argument. You'll be surprised. Some of them will say, what do you mean? Tell me a bit more, you know? Yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay. I'm just wondering if issues are not resolved in this season of marriage, you know, winter is just hitting us and hitting us hard. If we don't deal with issues, what are the consequences? What are some of the things that could end up happening in the marriage, Ruth?
We have so many things that would happen when issues are not resolved. And we have one thing that is even emotional violence. Ooh. You know, I'm seated there, I don't have the peace of mind, and you're thinking that violence just comes in by being physical. But the emotional aspect is really the one that is most affected. And when it is affected that way, then you find in my mind, I'm not able to pick or to see what is good in my partner.
Yeah.
And so even the treatment, so even lack of showing or extending that kindness. And also the physical violence comes in handy at some points, physical. You know, we've heard of cases, people even fighting each other. Others are even causing to death, you know. And it's just a matter of having resolved that thing that you can be able to maintain your peace. You know, James, I usually say that peace of mind, you can never find it in the shelves of any supermarket. And True. It is very important to just hold on to your peace. And so the emotional violence, the physical violence, you know, the children are also affected, the third parties that we talk of in the marriage, everyone, including even the workplace or in the businesses. So you lack to be productive in whatever you do because of an issue that you've not been able to resolve when it is winter for this kind of an aspect. Because love is very emotional and everyone loves to be loved. No one will ever say that I've had enough love. I mean, it should just come over and over and over again so that we don't experience such kind of issues and have healthy relationships. Yes.
Okay, I'm just wondering, Pauline, is this a season also where some people come to the conclusion that I got married to the wrong person? Is this a season where it is so cold, you begin to look outside, where can I get some warmth?
Absolutely. Actually, and that is the time when also couples would at times look for therapy, which is a good thing during winter. But again, those who are not maybe going out to look for a pastor, a therapist, or a trusted friend will just say we are not compatible, you know, and they conclude that completely. But during spring and during summer, things were happening.
Yeah.
But when winter comes, you feel like we are not compatible. I mean, now look at that. Seasons that do not last. So at times we give up at winter, but it may be winter was a wake-up call for us, you know. So if we look at it as winter is a wake-up call for us, then the issue of being incompatible will not arise. But yes, that's the time when most people give up. And at times some give up too soon.
Wow. I like what you said right there. Seasons do not last. So don't
Yes.
give up. Don't give up in the winter season. Giving you an opportunity to ask your questions, Relationship Clinic, looking at the winter season in marriage. Maybe this is the season that you're experiencing right now. The house is cold. Somebody was telling me the other day they were talking to a friend of theirs, and the friend of theirs was thinking, it's too early to go home. So you're inaelekea past 6, almost going to 7. They're thinking, what do you mean too early to go home? Yeah, kienda nyumbani mapema, bibi tu ni kelele, arguments. I'd rather go when it's just about time to sleep, so that nikiingia tu hivi watu wakalale, niamke mapema, niende kazini. That's not a marriage, my friend. That is not a marriage. It's just bad. There's a question here that says, kindly address the use of the words never and always in conflicts. They always escalate our conflicts, and since I found that out, I shut down whenever I hear them. Is that healthy also? Shutting down. Never and always. You never. You always. So the gentleman is saying whenever those words come up, they just trigger. He goes into nil by mouth, silent mode. Pauline, what do you think of that?
Yeah, and absolutely. And those are the words that come up a lot in the winter season. And that's why we are saying, until we are able to work with the present and be able to, to forgive it's like to forgive the past, be able to get to a point of saying, you know what, like a couple I had recently, they told me they had this happy day and they just asked one another, really, why do we have issues? Why do we pick on one another? You see? So you have to come to a realization and just decide, I'm tired of saying never, I'm tired of thinking about the past. Can we have a clean, a fresh start, And I always say that we give a lot of attention even at work. We do new strategies for a new year. What about doing a new strategy for your marriage and saying that we will not use these words and keep each other accountable, Like if you say always, if you bring up something of the past, it will not be fair for this relationship. So I agree with the caller, with the person who asked that, yes, those are words used a lot during winter. And if they're not addressed, if the attitude does not change for the better, so it moves from winter to the worst. And of course, that is really unfortunate. And that is not the reason why people came together in the first place.
Very true. There's another question here that says, how can one deal with a spouse who just wants to get their way in every situation and they refuse to communicate until you agree with them? Ruth, how do you deal with this one?
Wow, yes, indeed, I would say that marriage is caused to work. And even if this spouse is not willing to change or to look into the things in a better way, because we are evolving every other time, even like the seasons have evolved, even in marriages, things are really evolving. And we ought to ask ourselves, how do I support this partner of mine to be able to evolve? Yeah. And I look at it like we also have in our businesses or in the corporate or in the workplace, we call them institution, and the marriage is also an institution. And just like we could be keen in like a work setup, I am so keen to even go to school, gather some skills, become better so that I may qualify for this promotion or I qualify for this other paycheck, so that when the quota is reviewed, I mean, even my performance is reviewed. So I think we ought to be able to sit down as couples, and I suggest that we listen to each other and ask ourselves, what is that is causing things not work here? And for me to qualify to be like the award-winning wife or the award-winning husband, then what is my kind of a position to take to be able to say I do qualify, even to be this award-winning father? What is it that I need to do to be a better version of myself so that I am helped and I'm helping my person to be the kind of a person I desire? Because God desired of this thing to work. This marriage has to work, and we cause it to work. So then we are there to support one another.
Okay. Otieno, my good friend, how are you doing? Otieno is saying, and I love what he's saying, he says the words never and always can be used positively in the marriage. For example, I will never leave you. I will always love you. Otieno, that sounds like a song I've heard somewhere. But I love it. I love it. That is good, my friend. This one says, great conversation. And sometimes it's not necessarily a winter season, but rather behaving the way we saw our parents behave. The man is seen, but says nothing in the house and is emotionally detached. How can this cycle be broken in a marriage? Yeah, that's true. Our dads never used to say a lot. Even when I think back, when my dad spoke, things were thick, things were serious. Hakuwa mtu wa kuongea tu kila saa. No. So some of these things we've picked from what we saw in our parents' relationship. And it's not necessarily that there's an issue, but I'm okay, but I'm quiet. But your spouse is thinking, no, we can't live like this. So how do you break that cycle? How do you get somebody out of that mold that they've been set into because of how they were raised up?
All right. So, so we always say that we are our environment. So that's true. I mean, what I saw is what I am. I mean, I cannot really. I have some aspects of in however I do my things, and but I always say there's unlearning, there's learning and unlearning. So I mean, for the couple, I would ask, what kind of marriage do you want to have? I mean, there are things I saw happening that I say, when I get married, I would want to do this different. A man might have just seen the father being seen. Some people say I had never seen my father in the kitchen.
Yes.
But maybe for you don't mind being there, and possibly even you grew up hearing your mom saying, I wouldn't want you to be in the kitchen. You know the way things have changed these days. So you're also having that at the back of your mind. But you don't mind helping your spouse, What if you went abroad? There's no help out there, or there's no cheap labor, if I may call it. Because here we have cheap help. What do? Will you say because I was told? So what is it that you want? I always say every family should have their own culture. There's the culture we grew up with. But what is my culture with my spouse?
Yeah.
What is it that I can unlearn because I love my spouse, so I can help them? My dad didn't do, but I want to do. Nothing can stop me from doing it. So I'll start unlearning and learning the new way of doing my things. But yes, I agree. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just wondering, how does a couple then navigate out of a winter season? How do you ensure that the marriage doesn't freeze out? So that now, tumekauka tu, statue, nothing is happening because it's winter, everybody's on their own. How do we navigate through this season? Ruth, what tips can you give us?
I would give a tip of one, self-discovery. Get to know your spouse and get to know yourself.
Okay.
Because if I get to know my spouse, I know what they love and what they hate, and I will be able to work towards what they love, because this is a friend of mine. Basically, self-discovery. I'll also talk of laying down our expectations so that you're not getting surprised. If you find someone is not talking and they are not responding to your issues, just have that kind of expectations laid down so that you don't get them not resolved. The other thing is spicing that kind of a marriage, bringing in the warmth. Even when you are taking food and you're feeling this food is flat, you may look at a way of adding some spices. You may look at a way of making it better or sweeter than yesterday.
Yeah.
And so we want to ask ourselves, how can we be able to bring in the spicing in the marriage? We have to bring in some fun, otherwise we'll be funny. In this kind of regard, we ought to pray together and also play together, bringing in the spice, bringing in the fun within the family, so that we can be able to understand. Another thing that I love and also share with most of the people is when we want to be better, and we've already seen, like I am seeing Pauline's marriage is really thriving. And we want to borrow a leaf from her and maybe a principle or two, other than comparing myself with those that are not going to be of any value or adding any value. Because in this marriage, remember, we are not competitors. We are complementing each other and we are supporting each other in this journey. So I could be able to look at a family or a couple that is doing so well, thriving, and I would want to say, these are my friends. So that comes into associations. The kind of people that I keep around me, are they those that support us? Are they those that encourage us to walk this journey? Or are those that want to pull us away? Because in this regard, I will be able to look at what really will work for me.
Okay.
You know, when we talk of performance reviews, even in the work sector, and we're saying, can we discuss these things in an anniversary? What is working for us? Can we continue with this? And that which is not working for us, we can be able to drop it out. So communication really is the key pillar here, the enabler of all these to ensure that things will work for us.
Okay, I love that you've brought in the aspect of communication. Pauline, I sometimes feel like we make a lot of assumptions in marriage. If he loved me, he would know. If she loved me, she would know. Kwani ni lazima niseme. And so we begin to have a resentment and bitterness, and maybe our spouse has no idea what we are even bitter about. So talk to us a bit about the dangers of making assumptions, especially in a season like this.
Yeah, and it's very common. I mean, I made assumptions myself, and I remember when I disclosed to my spouse, when I realized he's actually not understanding, because I was wondering, don't you know how to treat a lady? You're a man. But I realized my husband has not been a husband before, but I am assuming that he should know. So I remember, just to self-disclose, I told him, I always say this, when I tell you to leave me or when I'm upset, I don't mean you leave me. I normally mean hold me tight and tell me kind words. And my husband was in shock.
Even me, I'm in shock.
He was like, what do you mean?
What do you mean?
Know? Yeah, and I remember my husband right there told me, I'm not an angel.
Yes.
You know? Tell me what you mean when you say, so many times we think our spouses are angels. Nobody is an angel. So I always say, teach your spouse. Don't assume. Teach them. Teach them. This is what I mean when I say this. This is what I like. And then also the other spouse should practice empathetic listening.
Okay.
Listen to your spouse. You know, get to understand. You don't trivialize, you know. Because if it's important for me, then it should be important for you because it's important for your spouse.
Yeah.
So do not assume anything. Lower your pride. And like I mentioned pride earlier, I always feel this is a big destroyer because I don't want to say. I want him to pick it out from me. I want her to pick it out. Shouldn't she know how to treat a man? No, she has not had a man before. And I always say, even if it's a widower, or maybe you have married someone who was married before, you're still a new person to them.
Yeah.
So teach them what you'd want. Do not assume. It's a big destroyer. Yeah.
Wow. Being intentional. There's something you mentioned earlier, Ruth, you know, about bringing some spice. Bring back the fireworks in this dead marriage. Can these dead bones live again? You know, talk to us about the importance of being intentional. You know, I realize, even just reflecting on my own marriage as we have this conversation, you know, sometimes life takes over. Life takes over, and sometimes you don't have time for some things which are important. Watoto lazima waende skuli, lazima nikatafute school fees, you know, workload, responsibilities in the family, in the community, and sometimes you just neglect your marriage. You're praying that things will work out for good, and because you're not intentional, things keep going from bad to worse. So talk to us a bit about being intentional, where bringing back the fireworks is concerned.
Yeah, the fireworks really ought to be cost to work. I mean, you will not just even buy the fireworks, those things, and you leave them to light on themselves.
Yes.
They ought to be fixed, and they have to really have to work. And you know, we talk of small things that really matter and mean a lot. And you can even be able to look at a lollipop that if I bring this surprise, you know, love is not expensive. And it is not about going away for a holiday in abroad. It may even mean walking and taking an evening walk together, playing together, and doing some stuff together, that which is within your means. And when we look out in our eyes, there are so many opportunities around our area. And we are not of isolation, meaning everybody will undergo their challenges. But how we resolve them, it is very, very what makes the difference. So being intentional is saying we are causing it to work. And I believe the aspect of mindset, when we remember where we came from, I remember, James, you know, the courting times, the first time we met, how did we used to treat each other, And because things have evolved, children have come, people have come around, those should not be the showstopper of our love. And so we ought to understand, because today if I make tea and I have put, let's say, rosemary, and it tastes and it has a nice aroma, tomorrow I may want to understand a different way of doing it and becoming better, because we are looking at becoming our better versions of ourselves. So what is it that, if I've understood the love language of my partner, what is that he loves doing? And what are some of these surprises that I'll be able to make? You know, if it is the flowers, give someone flowers that they can smell them. Don't talk of how good they are in their absence. Definitely tell them when they are able to hear and to listen, bringing them the roses and letting them to smell. You know, when you talk of roses, and the way I love roses myself, and remember they grow in the midst of thorns, so the conflicts will be there, yes. And I'm looking at this lady who is walking down the aisle. She's getting married, holding a bouquet. And that bouquet, the way it is done, it has thorns within, but they are not visible.
Very true.
And so we can be able to work around, seeing the good things, seeing what we want to love around our partners, and overlook that which is not working. So the thorns, overlook them, see the roses, look of a way of being. You know, we are so creative in our relationships, in our marriages. And with that creativity, we just bring the spark. Is it a holiday or quarterly holiday or whatever outing, a coffee date, all those? I think remembering the first love and praying and trusting God that He can make it better for us, being intentional, everybody 50-50 nothing. It is 100-100. Bring 100% into it. The other party brings in the 100% in it, and we are good to go.
Awesome. Okay. We are giving you one more opportunity to ask questions. 20316 SMS line, WhatsApp number 0786 316 316. You know, Ruth mentioned flowers, and I remember somebody had put a post on Father's Day this past Sunday, and they had said the sad reality is that most men receive their first batch of flowers when they're dead. And I thought, oh my goodness, that is sad and true, but it is what it is. It is the relationship clinic. The winter season of marriage is what we are looking at. We are hanging out with Pauline Gikanga, marriage counselor, and Ruth Mweni, who's an author and transformative coach. Thank you for your responses. This one says, it has to be deliberate. One has to seek and do things that will bring warmth, adoration, and a smile. Shock the lady with a foot massage, make her hair, kiss her, hold hands, buy her something crazy. Bottom line is, let her know that unamkatia all over, now and for life. Okay, that's a good one right there. So, ladies, as we wrap up, because we have about 5 more minutes, you know, what would you say to that couple who is probably at the verge of giving up, Pauline, because the winter season has just been too harsh for them, and you are contemplating, you know what, this is not working, you know, maybe it's just time to move on. What would you tell that couple today?
This is what I would tell that couple, that no marriage is hopeless. There is hope for every marriage. And something else I would tell them is that our differences are assets, not liabilities.
Okay.
So if we're able to pick out the best in one, because there's still something, I'm sure there is, if we can build on the good in our spouses, then we should be able to, you know, let the dry bones live again. It's not easy, of course, I must admit that. It's not easy for when a marriage has gotten here, or even to the dry bones, to come back alive. But there's a lot of intentionality that is needed. And you might find that one spouse is more proactive than the other spouse. Now, I'll just encourage the proactive spouse not to give up, to keep on doing their bit, what they can be able to do, and it will attract the other person. Believe me, it will attract. Good attracts. But most of the time when there's resentment from both sides, definitely nothing good can come. And so you both give up. So I'll just want to tell you that no marriage is hopeless.
Nice. Ruth, anything you want to add to that?
Yes, true. Just like Pauline has mentioned, it's about having faith all through. trusting that things can still work out. We are not broken beyond repair, and we have enough support system around us. We have the help from friends, the associations, the word of God, praying and seeking. Being intentional to seek the help, definitely we'll be able to seek that help, because we only need to be fat partners. Fat partners, I mean, we ought to be faithful to one another, we ought to be available to one another, and we have to be teachable. Because if I stand in by my own opinions, then that will not take me anywhere.
Yeah.
But I need to be this kind of person who will be able to listen from others, experts that have gone ahead of me, for me to be intentional, be a better version of myself. Because if I am better version of myself, then also my partner working towards being a better version, then that is where we'll get the hope of having it work all over again. Because if it ever worked, then it can also work again.
Wow, I love that, and I've gotten the opportunity to host several couples that come to mind even as we talk about this. In fact, there's a couple I hosted, and for them, things were so bad they had actually separated. They had not cut off completely with a divorce, but they had separated. They were living separately, and because both of them valued the relationship, both of them sought for help, and they were able to find help, and they were able to come together. They went through quite a number of counseling sessions, still living apart, and then came together, and now they're together. And now they are helping other couples also to be able to resolve their issues, couples who've gotten as far as they had gotten. And so I love what both of you are sharing, that it's not the end of the road. There's still hope, there's still light at the end of the tunnel. So to those couples who are tuned in today and they're in that space, I hope that what you've shared today has been an encouragement to you. 1 minute parting shot from each of you, and then we wrap up our conversation today. Let's begin with you, Ruth. What's your parting shot?
Thank you, James. And I think for me, pain is not wasted. And the winter season, we should be able to learn the lessons and then fall forward to be those kind of people who will be able to come up. I love the example you've given about the couple, that whatever season you're undergoing and you come out stronger.
Yeah.
What cannot kill you can only make you better. And so you will be able to help many others and support, because venting and leading someone else to wake up from the state they are in, then it is an encouraging thing. Giving each other's gifts, exchanging each other's gifts. We don't want to look like the Dead Sea that only receives, then I am so selfish.
Yeah.
It is about me and myself. Then we can be able to change the language and say we and ours. And that way we'll be able to be mindful of each other, and we can be able to spice it up irrespective of the winter and still find some warmth.
Very true. Pauline, parting shot.
Let the winter season be a wake-up call for your growth, so that you emerge stronger, but not going to the other side of it, parting ways, giving up. So let it be a wake-up call, and there's help, so call out for help.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Pauline and Ruth, it's been great having both of you. Asanteni sana. May the Lord bless you. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. God bless you too.
Awesome. So if you're looking at your marriage and it looks like the dry bones and you're wondering, can these dry bones live again? We are here to tell you, oh yes, they can come back to life. It depends on you and the attitude you decide to take on and the willingness to learn and to grow. Yes, that marriage can thrive again. That's all the time we have for the Relationship Clinic today. Wacha tufunge clinic. Back next week. Have a great day. God bless you.